Well, I have to say, Martha gets off to a pretty good start in this passage. Verse 38, it says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. We're not totally clear from how Luke words it if all the disciples are with Jesus or not, but it could be a big crowd. She's doing the right thing. She's showing hospitality. And later in the passage, she calls Jesus Lord, which is also really good. So she clearly loves Jesus. And then there's her sister, Mary, who is sort of cast as the hero of the story. It says in verse 39, Martha had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. You ever heard about people talking about sitting at Jesus' feet? Maybe one of those phrases that we hear from time to time, not really sure what it's about. You sit at somebody's feet. And that's what Mary is doing here. She's sitting here. She's at Jesus' feet. She's listening. Now, today, sitting at somebody's feet might be odd. There is a giant space between my feet and the rest of you, which is probably as it should be. But back in Jesus' time, that was how learners stayed close to their teachers. A student would sit at the actual feet of the rabbi. And Mary is actually, even though that's normal, what she's doing as a woman is not normal. It was generally, the male rabbis would generally have male students, and female students were rare. It was women who would teach other women. And so Mary is taking on this countercultural role, but she doesn't care because she just wants to be with Jesus. She's right where she should be, fixing her eyes on Jesus. No amount of social pressure or whatever is normal is going to keep her from being where she wants to be, which is right there in the presence of God. So then verse 40 takes us back to Martha. Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. So she came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work myself? Tell her to help me. Now, Luke says that Mary was listening to what Jesus said, but Martha is just kind of on autopilot. And she doesn't really seem to put things on hold to listen like Mary is listening. Or at the least, you wonder, aren't there some preparations that Martha could do that would be like within earshot of Jesus so she could still, be, cutting up the peppers and still listening? She doesn't seem to do that here. Maybe you've been in that situation where you have guests coming over. You look nervously at your watch and you see that you've got only 10 minutes left to get the food in the oven or start the grill, vacuum the living room, maybe put on some deodorant to hide the smell of your stress. And in those moments leading up to that hosting, ironically, it can be really easy to forget, why did I invite these people over in the first place? And then when the guests do come, you might not be all the way ready, but that's okay. You can invite them to sit with you in the kitchen and finish dinner and also talk to them. Or you could put the preparations on hold, say hello, shake hands, give hugs, and so on. Martha does not do it that way. And I think this passage, we can wonder about Martha. What's going on with her? I wonder about this because Mary is at Jesus' feet and Martha is avoiding Jesus. We have to ask, what's going on that her hospitality, which is meant to be a way to connect to guests, what's going on that her hospitality is disconnecting her from her guests? That's a little strange. And to be clear, the work itself was not bad. This passage is not saying that lofty conversations about theology are somehow better than manual labor. It's not the message of this passage. Martha was showing hospitality by having Jesus in. She's doing something that's good. But as Luke describes it, the focus on the tasks of hospitality kept her from seeing the guest. It's like the program is becoming more important than the people, and you forget the people that you started the program for in the first place. She's distracted. She is the opposite of Instead of fixing her eyes on Jesus, her eyes are darting every which way. And then we see Martha jumping in and interrupting. Jesus was talking to Mary, it says. Mary was listening. It's not like they were just sitting there doing nothing, watching Martha work. Martha jumps in and she says, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. So she puts the focus on herself. Actually, she puts the focus on her sister. She's not doing her chores. Common refrain of siblings everywhere. Tell her to help me. Mom, Dad. Oh, wait, I mean Jesus. What's happening here is that another distraction, yet another distraction, somebody else's relationship with Jesus is keeping Martha from focusing on her own relationship to Jesus. You get the sense that throughout Jesus' visit, she's just not been having the best attitude about Jesus. We used to have a word for this in the KJ house. We haven't had to use it in a long time, thankfully, but when the kids were little, we had a word which was baditude. Baditude. It's a bad attitude. And Martha here is sporting a serious baditude. Mary is listening to what Jesus wants to say. Martha is telling Jesus what to say. It's pretty different. And so Jesus answers her, Martha, Martha, you are worried about many things. You are upset about many things. He says her name twice, Martha, Martha. There's a firmness there and also compassion. You can really see Jesus caring for her. You are worried and upset about many things. And again, you got to wonder, maybe Martha is worried and upset about more than just Jesus' arrival. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Martha has avoidance issues more generally. Maybe she's afraid of being well known by others. That can be scary and risky to let others know you and love you. Maybe that baditude was just a front. Maybe she was just scared of being known deeply by Jesus for whatever reason. David Garland, who's a Bible professor at Baylor, says, how is it that someone can do everything right and still be wrong? Martha was doing the right thing. She welcomed Jesus in verse 38, sign of hospitality. She calls him Lord. She seems to truly love him. She just gets distracted and stressed out and frustrated with her sister for not then joining her in the stress. Maybe she's even jealous of her sister's relationship to Jesus. Jesus says only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Martha has allowed the good to distract her from the better. Her priorities are not quite right. Her affections and her emotions, the way that her heart is going is just misdirected off to the side a little bit, or maybe a lot. And I think for us, getting our attention into the right place, getting our attitude into a good place, that would be really easy if life were full of choices between bad things and good things. I'll make that decision every day. Well, actually, I'll mess that decision up too. It would be a little easier if we had a choice between good and bad. But sometimes life gives us a choice between two goods, and one of those goods may be better than the other. And Mary saw that, and she used wisdom and discernment to do the greater good, which was sitting with Jesus, giving him all of her attention. Martha misses that good. She was too busy doing the good to notice the better that was right there in her living room. I think we all know that when our work, whatever work we do, when our lives become just a series of tasks, it's exhausting. And I identify with Martha here. I wonder if you do too. There's a lot of good work to do in this world, and this world needs me to do it. Isn't that how we think sometimes? There's that bumper sticker that says, Jesus is coming, looks busy. question this passage challenges us with is, how can we do our work? How can we do our service? How can we do our ministry without letting it distract us from Jesus? Having invited Jesus into the homes of our hearts, how do we welcome him there and just make sure we calm down and listen? Jesus says only one thing is needed. You know, usually if there's a question in church or in Sunday school, the answer is Jesus. And that's true here. What is the one thing that is needed? Jesus. More specifically here, sitting at Jesus' feet and listening to him. That's what this passage really calls us to do. Therefore, I tell you, Jesus says, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink or wear. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothes? Jesus says, look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Jesus says, can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Jesus says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's the life that Jesus invites us to. And I want to make that decision that Mary makes. She's not just sitting there doing nothing, although it feels like it's a Martha, but she has purposely chosen to listen to Jesus. And Jesus says she has chosen what is better. So if we're doing our work, whatever the work of our lives is, we're doing our work with that same kind of attitude that Martha has, maybe it's time to take a break and be with Jesus. Or maybe the work that we're doing doesn't permit a break. And so what we really need to do is invite Jesus into the work that we're doing. Martha didn't really do that either. This passage is not an anti-work passage. It's not a passage that says stop doing stuff. It's a passage that is anti-work when you're not paying attention to Jesus. That's the issue. The problem for Martha is not the work, it's her heart. The problem is not the tasks. Those are good tasks. The problem is the focus. So as we do whatever our work is that makes up our day, whether that's inside the home or outside the home or relational or at a workplace or whatever it is, we can consider some short little one-line prayers, sentence prayers, some people call them, that help us remember God's presence. Lord, you are here. Lord, you are here. 4 words. We can remember that. We can remember the words. Can we remember to say it? Lord, you are here. We can just thank God, too, as we go about our work and our preparation. God, thank you. Thank you. Another sentence prayer. God, thank you. We can ask Jesus for help. Jesus, help me. One of my favorite prayers. I find that comes out of my mouth quite naturally on a regular basis. Jesus, help me. We might pray, God, I offer this work to you. I offer you this task. I give it to you. So what Martha teaches us is that work without a connection to Jesus is just being busy. Just busy work. But when we deliberately sit down with Jesus and invite him into our work, and when we really listen to what Jesus says, then we're not just settling for good enough, but we're getting the best. We're choosing what is better, as Mary does. So my prayer for us, South End Neighborhood Church of Emmanuel, is that we would not forget the reason that we work, that we serve, that we show hospitality. May we not forget the reason that we do anything in the first place. It's all for Jesus. It's all for Jesus. Mary threw herself into Jesus' presence, delighting in the chance to be with him. And Jesus says Mary has chosen what is better, and that will not be taken away from her.